Introductions. I'll go ahead and introduce the moderators. My name is Jared Sharp. I'm the senior class president. To my right, I have, do you want to introduce yourself? No. You don't want to introduce yourself? To my right is my senior class vice president, Madison Sims. To his immediate right is Melissa Halpern, our class treasurer. And unfortunately, our three other class officers were not able to attend. They had something pop up and they had duties called, so they weren't able to be here tonight. But they wanted to thank you two for being here and giving this opportunity. And now that we're talking about thankfulness, I would like to thank Mr. King and the administration faculty at Sylvania High School for allowing us to put on this program and allowing us to practice some constitutional rights here tonight. All right, is anyone excited for a forum tonight? Okay, we're going to allow each candidate to start with a 2-minute introduction where they can say anything pertaining to their campaign or say anything they feel the voters should know about themselves or their views. If we come to some questions, each candidate has the right to not answer, and all they have to do is pass and go to the next candidate, or we can go on to the next question. So we'll go ahead and let Mr. Bill Monroe start with his 2-minute introduction.
Okay, I'm Bill Monroe. I'm the Democratic candidate for superintendent. It's great to be back here at Sylvania. I had 18 great years here. This is my 36th year in education. 18 as a classroom teacher and coach, and then this is my 18th year as an administrator in the system. I'm currently the principal at Valley Head. I have been the elementary principal and principal for the past 18 years. I feel like I've developed the skills needed to lead this school system. I hope that you will consider me because of my experience and because I feel like I can do the job. So I'd appreciate your vote. I have a website which is monroeforsuperintendent.com, and I have a Facebook page also, so you can find me there. Thank you.
Well, it's great to be here. I commend the senior class officers for organizing such an. Is my mic on? I commend the senior class officers for organizing such an event. As a candidate, really the most important thing you can do is have an opportunity to get in front of the voters and to express your ideas, your vision, and your platform for what you hope to do for the school system. And I thank them for providing this opportunity to get in front of some voters and people. I also thank the media for coming up here and covering this. I think this is definitely a really good thing to cover. I am Jason Barnett, and I am running for Superintendent of Education on the Republican Party. I'm really excited about this opportunity. I'm an educator since 2002 in DeKalb County. I've served as a classroom teacher and instructional coach at a school level, and instructional coach at a district level. I'm currently a school administrator at Collinsville. I also serve as an adjunct professor of instructional leadership at Jacksonville State University, where I help prepare future school principals and school leaders. My wife Liz, she's in the audience. She is an educator at Plainview School. She teaches English language arts to 10th and 11th grade students. I'd love to have your vote on November the 8th. I do have a Facebook and website as well. On Facebook, you can search Barnett for Superintendent to learn more about me. Website is drjasonbarnett.com, drjasonbarnett.com. Of course, I want to answer any questions that you may have, and hopefully I know these will answer a lot of questions tonight, but any further communications that I could do to earn your vote, I'd be thankful for that opportunity. My cell phone is 256-717-3558, and I would love to hear from you. Thank you.
We will now move on to the questioning. We have a list of 12 questions that each three of us will be asking. Once again, the candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Once your time is up, at that point, we will have to tell you time's up so we can get along through the night. And we also ask that the crowd, all of you guys are respectful. We're Sylvania, you're from DeKalb County. This is a great place, it's a great area, so I don't believe anyone's going to cause a ruckus, but we would ask that, everyone be respectful here tonight. All right. Now that we got that out of the way, go and ask the questions. We'll allow Dr. Jason Barnett to answer the first question. Describe how you would work with the principals across DeKalb County.
Is the mic messing with the TV? I know. Okay. How would I work with principals across DeKalb County? I think as superintendent, we've got to have the best leaders in our school that we possibly can. You've got to have a good rapport with those principals. If you don't trust your principals and go out and encourage them and support them to do their job, you know, you're going to be hard pressed to be very successful. And as superintendent, I want to be in schools on a regular basis. I know one of my goals is within the first 6 weeks of school, I want to be in every classroom in the county. Just maybe pop in, say hi, let them know who I am and how I can support them. But that goes beyond just that time. It's a reoccurring thing. The principals, the teachers, and everybody needs to know that I'm there supporting them, and not only supporting them, but sharing my vision, sharing my ideas with them, keeping that front and center for what we're trying to do, because we all have to be on the same page, or otherwise we're not going to be successful. And so I think, being here and talking with the principals on a regular basis, knowing what's good is going on, what we can do better, making sure we're working together toward a positive product and a great end goal, make sure our vision and our mission is the same. Our vision is really, a vision is kind of a Pandora, is what you really want it to be. It's exactly what it wants to be, but our mission and our steps to get there are sometimes often very different. And so we need to make sure that as a superintendent, we're in the school, helping to guide those steps, encouraging those steps, and pushing those forward. And you got to trust your principals to do the best job that they know how, understanding that you're on the same page and you're working toward the same end goal.
Thank you, Dr. Jason Barnett. Now on to you, Mr. Phil Monroe.
Well, the principals are the instructional leaders of your school. So you have to work closely with them. You have to let them choose their employees. You have to give them the opportunity to have open lines of communication so that you know what's going on and they know what's going on. We're all on the same page. I plan on working closely with the principals. I plan on keeping an open line of communication and visiting each school and finding out what they need. We need to give every school what they need in order to be successful, because we need to give our students those opportunities. But I plan on working closely with each principal. I feel like I have a good relationship with them already, and I believe I can work further with them to improve education. Thank you.
Describe how would you, as superintendent, implement the revision to the Alabama Administrative Code on instructional services for students who inhabit the characteristics of dyslexia to the DeKalb County school system?
Mr. Monroe, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, dyslexia has been found to be a problem, and at one time it was not recognized as a part of the special ed umbrella. We've always had 504 plans and things of that nature to take care of this, but now I believe we have a dyslexia person that is certified and highly qualified in that, and if we need to expand that program, we will. We'd have to find someone to help with her, but at the same time, if we need to expand it, we will.
Yeah, I know Ms. Sims here, she worked very diligently and very hard to help bring that the attention to that at the state level. Mary Scott Hunter and several folks worked on a task force. Denise Gibbs, they worked very closely together to push forward, to educate our legislators and educate people on what the needs were for that. And I know, students, we take our global scholar assessments, and we take different assessments, and students who aren't achieving where they need to be, we need to make sure we're identifying reasons why they may not achieve this level of academic success they possibly can. And so, as we said, we have hired people, and we do have people in place that are experts on this. I personally am not an expert on dyslexia, and I'm not ashamed to admit that, but I know folks that are and that can help and can support us. And at the end of the day, supporting student needs is one of the most important things that we can do. And if we can identify areas that are maybe prohibiting them from being as successful as they can, then we need to make sure that we identify that, find out what we can do to help support them, the resources and tools and everything we can do to carry out that. And I know there is a lot of work that goes with that, but it's important that no matter what it takes to get that done, that we reach our students the best that we can.
As the new superintendent, please describe your plans, actions, and goals for the first 6 months or 100 days of your term.
Okay. As superintendent of education, you come in January, so you come in during the middle of the school year, and there's so many things that have already kind of in place that have already set and you've kind of committed to for that school term. So there's some things that are kind of already in place, but immediately upon, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected superintendent, within that first 6 weeks, and many people have told me that's maybe a little bit ambitious, but I want to be in every classroom introducing myself to teachers and support personnel and everybody, which I've met most everybody at this point anyway, it seems like. But I want to continue to make sure that they know that I'm there to help them, and anything they can do, they can contact me. Hearing the concerns, I want to have community meetings all over the county, hearing the good things, the concerns, and areas for improvement, and making sure that we're going out spreading our vision of communication, of being a voice for our school, of innovating our technology and resources, making sure that we're spreading that vision for what we want and all those things, and instructional leadership, making sure that people realize that our priority is putting the best people in place for everything we can do. I think really that first 6 months, there's a lot of that. Also, I know there's a lot of issues. You know, we across the county, there are some quicker fixes, and some of them are going to take time to do. Some of those quick fixes, we need to make sure that we go ahead and jump on some of those things. Technology is an issue that we have a major lack of, and that's something that day one is going to be a major focus to try to get funding and put a plan in place. I've already spoke to many superintendents and school districts and school boards trying to develop a plan for what would be our best platform, not only putting technology in there, but making sure we have a digital delivery platform that we can carry it out. I know some teachers here, Ms. Ragsdale, Ms. Ledbetter, are kind of leading the way with that. I know they're going to do some sampling of some digital content delivery platforms this upcoming semester. So I'm really excited to see what they're doing with that and kind of learn and get some feedback from them.
The first thing that we're going to focus on is how to improve technology and expand it into the classroom. We have to make sure we put as many devices into the hands of our students as we can, because we're living in a new age, and we're in 21st century, but sometimes we're still using 20th century methods. So we're going to focus on improving and expanding technology into the classroom. We also have to make sure that our teachers are ready to do professional development so that they'll be able to purvey this to the students. Also, we need to keep an open line of communication. We need to visit schools. We need to talk with principals. We need to talk with teachers. We also need to evaluate our central office staff and see where we are there, because we may need to make some adjustments or may need to make some changes there.
Thank you. High-performing students and accountability are priorities. How will you assess DeKalb County's current levels of performance, program effectiveness, and teacher effectiveness? Ms. Monroe?
Okay, we're currently in the middle of drawing up plans for a new teacher evaluation system. Remains to be seen how that will turn out. We're still doing Educate Alabama, but we need to make sure that our principals and our assistant principals are going into classrooms and doing walkthroughs to see where our teachers are. As far as the program effectiveness and performance, we need to look at our test scores. I know that we're doing Global Scholar and other things along that line to try and do progress monitoring, and we need to look closely at that. We'll also look at ACT Aspire and the ACT scores to see how our students are progressing and make changes where necessary.
Thank you.
You know, when we look at teacher evaluations, we are working on revising the teacher evaluation. There's intrapersonal and interpersonal components of that. Intrapersonal, you need to make sure that every teacher is reflecting on their own practices, on their own skills, on their ability, and reflecting where they are, and then, you know, setting goals for exactly where they want to be, and then develop a plan to make sure that they're reaching those. That's one component of it. The next component is observations, classroom observations by the school administration, by central office staff, by their peers. People need to make sure that they're going around and observing those things and patting teachers on the back when they're doing some great things, and then when there's some areas that are weak or maybe need some improvement, providing professional development and resources so that they can meet their goal of what we expect to be an effective teacher. You know, how do we assess our current level of performance and achievement? I think there's, you know, achievement and attainment. There's two ways to look at that. Achievement, you know, you can look at of growth, how we are growing. You know, we're achieving more and more every day, more a year, but then there's also an attainment. We want our students to grow annually, semester. We want to, you know, have intervals, Global Scholar tests 3 times. There's other measurements that we can use. And we want to make sure our students are continually growing and improving, but there's also an attainment or component where we have high standards. We want our students to meet, you know, high standards and high benchmarks, not just growing, although that is the most important, that our students are continually growing, but we want to make sure that they're growing at a rapid enough pace that by the time they get where they want to be, they can have high levels of attainment on the ACT or on whatever it may be that their plans for post-secondary education, higher education, whatever that may be. So there's a lot of different ways we look at that, and then once we set goals based on our schools, based on that information, that data that we've just received, and then we can develop a real plan to make sure that the resources, both tangible and intangible resources, are provided and pushed out in our schools so we can be as successful as we possibly can.
How will you, as superintendent, determine how to distribute resources throughout the county schools?
Well, that's a very good question, and as I've toured the county, and I'm currently at Collinsville, and I see discrepancies and disparity at many of our schools. But that being said, not all schools have the same needs. So I think, one thing that we need to make sure we do is talking with our principals, talking with our people. We need to have, some priority lists. I think we need to go around to our communities and set some priority lists, and then make sure that we fulfill those priority lists and not just set on our own and say, well, this is what we need to do. But of course, you also have to have some district-wide priorities. These are some district initiatives that we need to push out because it's part of our school vision, our vision as a leadership team of DeKalb County, as what we want for our students. So I think there's, two areas there. That's one thing that needs to go district-wide, but then we also, each school needs to be responsible and participate in developing a plan. These are things that we as a local school feel that we need to make us successful. And so, so I think there's a couple different ways to look at that there. But as equitable as possible, but understanding that equitable doesn't always mean the same, or fair doesn't always mean the same.
First thing we need to do is a needs assessment at each school, and then we need to set the priorities to do what's best for our system, because sometimes when you're looking at schools, the needs of one outweigh the needs of another. There may be something that needs to be done immediately. I know Collinsville has just built about 10 classrooms down there, but probably needed 16.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we build, we only build what we think we need, and we don't build anything for the future. And we need to look at what's going on, where the growth is in our system, because if we need to build more buildings at a place because growth is more there, then we have to look at that. Every school is different and every school has needs, but you need to prioritize there to do what needs to be done. Now you have to look at immediate needs and then long range needs. I don't know if we have a long range building plan in this system. I've not seen one. I know what my needs are at Valley Head, and we could go from there and I could tell you exactly what I need. So each principal should be responsible for that. You also need to talk to community leaders and see how they feel, what they think their school needs, and teachers and your support personnel, because sometimes you get the best answers from your support personnel. Thank you.
What actions would you take to get members of the community in DeKalb County more involved in the school system?
I believe that you need to do more community meetings. You need to attend PTO meetings or any other meeting that you can go to. Ball games. I think you get a lot of feedback going to athletic events or to band competitions. You can find out what everybody is in need of there, because people will come up to you and tell you what they need. But I believe that if you're open and honest and go from school to school at different times and attend different events, you're going to find out a whole lot about that school and what their needs are.
I agree with Mr. Monroe. I mean, if you want people involved and you want to get communities involved, oftentimes you've got to go to them. I think throughout this campaign, we've had meet and greets, from the far north to the far south and several points in between. And we've been fortunate to have a great turnout at most all of those. And so, we've advertised, and so people knew we were coming and people showed up. And I think that's something that we're going to hopefully continue to do as superintendent. One area that I loved last year, in this very lunchroom, Sylvania had a board meeting here. And I think that was fantastic. We also had one at Collinsville last year. And what we did is we had an open house for about an hour. And during that open house, all the classrooms were open. Parents were encouraged to come. The board members, superintendent, people would come and walk through the classroom, see what was going on, talk with teachers, talk with students, talk with parents, see all that kind of stuff. And then when we had the board meeting, We let, for at Collinsville, I spoke here. Mr. King and Mr. Ashley spoke and presented some really good things that were going on as far as the school, honored some individual students on some achievement that they had made. And then they had the board meeting where parents and community members could see what was going on. I think that's something that's really important. Also, you know, during the school day at school, we have pep rallies for football team, basketball team, all kinds of stuff that we integrate athletics into our school day. I think one thing that we need to do is integrate academics into our athletic events. The county tournament, for example, in basketball, we've got a location up there at the Civic Center. You know, when you come in the entrance, there's a lot of area there. You know, you could have different schools on different nights set up. Somebody have their beta club, 5 have their robotics team, or somebody have something going on that's really promoting the academics and enrichment part of that school to make sure, hey, you know, there's more that goes on to our school, because the truth is athletic events turn out a lot more people than your open house, PTO events, and that sort of thing. So it's very important to bring academics to the athletics if they're not going to come here.
Thank you, Dr. Burnett. What are your opinions on consolidation?
That's a tough question right there, because every school community takes great pride in their school. Everybody takes really good pride, and oftentimes some of the smaller schools have as much involvement as some of your larger schools. You know, I don't know what the perfect answer is on that. I know that typically, you know, schools the size of Sylvania and larger can offer more than some of our very small schools. You know, that's just something that you've got to check the climate. I know consolidation had been mentioned in the past, and there wasn't board support for it. So there's a lot of people and a lot of positions that make those determinations and make those decisions, and that's not something just the superintendent does. But at the end of the day, as an elected official, elected superintendent, it is your job to do what is best for all students of DeKalb County, and not just any particular single community. So, you know, those situations and decisions will be made on a case-by-case basis, consulting with a lot of different folks.
I feel like with consolidation, you have communities that support their schools in a big way, the small schools and our larger schools. I don't think that you need to take away that identity that a community has. I know that you can offer more classes with a larger school, but you also lose that identity that your community has within that system. And I'm not a big fan of consolidation. I'm principal at, it's probably the smallest K-12 school in the system. And I love our situation. I wouldn't change it for anything. And I know I have parents that feel the same way. We have smaller schools across the system. I don't believe that you'll get very much support. I don't believe the board will support consolidation. If consolidation comes, it will come from the state level, because I don't plan on recommending consolidation during my term in office if I'm elected.
The main building at Sylvania High School was built in the 1940s and has 2 stories but no elevator. There is also no air conditioning in the new gym, which can cause extremely uncomfortable conditions for athletic and non-athletic events throughout the year. What would you do to improve the facilities at Sylvania High School?
I don't, is there some sort of a lift to take you from the first floor to the second floor here?
There's a chair lift.
There is a chair lift. The first thing then you'd need to do is look at the air conditioning in the gym. You have a way of getting students to the second floor if they have a physical disability. Right now we would look at air conditioning in the gym first, because I know in the spring and summer, if you're going to have graduation or something in there, you really need air conditioning. I would look at air conditioning of course, Fife has a new gym and they have air conditioning, and Valley Head has a new gym and we have air conditioning, and Crossville will too. But the other gyms that we have across the system, they need to be air conditioned also, because sometimes it might rain at graduation and you'd have to have that. Then we would look at if we need, of course I taught on the second floor here for 15 years and I understand the problems there, but a physically disabled child right now, if you can get them up there with the chair lift, that's probably sufficient for now. We would look at air conditioning in the gym first.
like Mr. Monroe said, I'm at Collinsville, now currently, and we don't have any air conditioning in our gym, and our gym isn't large enough to hold graduation or anything of that nature. And I understand the challenges you have when you don't have adequate space or air conditioning to do something if you wanted to anyway. That is without doubt, that's a need. I know there's other needs here here at Sylvania and schools across our district. But definitely the air conditioning is something that would definitely need to be addressed. I'm not really sure why air conditioning wasn't originally, as we mentioned, Valley Head and Fife and many of the other newer gyms all have air conditioning, so I'm not certain exactly why that was left out at the construction time, because as we know, during that construction is typically going to be the least expensive time to put something like that in to a facility. So I'm not exactly sure why it was left out, but for whatever reason but that is something that would definitely need to be looked at and put on our capital improvement plan to make those improvements. Also, within the chairlift, that's something that has hopefully satisfied the need for right now, but with more students and other disabilities, it may definitely be needed. And if you have a student who has a disability, you've got to make sure that you meet accommodate whatever need they have so that they can have access to a appropriate education. So whatever that may be, that's something that's got to take place. I mean, that's one of those things that just got to be bumped up there. Hopefully the chairlift is something that is sufficing and is adequate for what we need right now. But if time comes that's not adequate, then we'll do what we need to do to make changes.
There are multiple entry and exit points on several campuses in DeKalb County schools. Do you believe this to be a security risk? If so, what would your plan be to improve the situation? If not, explain.
I certainly, think it is a security risk. I think pretty much all of our campuses have that same problem. I speak at Collinsville. There's a U.S. highway that goes right in front of our campus, and then there's a city road that comes right up the middle of our campus. So I understand that. We deal with it every day with public roads. We have to block off a portion of our road during the mornings and afternoons just for student traffic, bus traffic, and things of that nature. During the day, you can't prohibit traffic from going on those roads. There's some things that we can do. Fencing is something that helps. If you can limit people's access to points, that's something that helps. I think another thing that we can do is our surveillance and our entry points. You mentioned a lot of different entry points. I've talked to a guy who's a safety and security specialist, and Fort Payne City and several other school districts have key cards. The teacher ID also serves as a card, and that way the doors lock. They lock when the bells are rung, and then they open up like 30 seconds before the next bell rings, so that students have access to go in and out, and then teachers will be at that area supervising, making sure strangers or other people aren't on. It may be where contracting that out is cost prohibitive, but several school districts that I've researched have hired somebody on their staff that does their video surveillance, updates it, make sure everything's running with it. They also operate and install the keypads and the keyless access entry points. They have their maintenance and IT people pull the wires and do all that kind of stuff. So I think there's some things that we can look at and determine what would be the best cost effective. Because at the end of the day, you have to have a safe school environment from a security standpoint, but as well as an emotional kind of security as well. So I think those are things that you have to really take care of. If you don't feel safe and secure, learning doesn't take place. So I think those are some things that definitely have to be addressed and need to be addressed very soon.
Thank you.
Okay, just about every school that we have, we've built on at every school all around the system. We build extra buildings, and we're so spread out, and you have multiple buildings, well, then you're going to have problems with entryways because anybody can walk in. I think that you need to upgrade your security system by looking at your video cameras, your surveillance system. The keypad idea is a good idea, but you're going to have it on multiple buildings, on multiple campuses. At our place, we've got 6 major buildings, and we have a building that is across the road. We have a railroad track that runs about 150 yards in front of our building. That is a safety issue if there's ever a hazardous material spill. Our school sits with a main streets running all around it. It's on a square, and then you have other buildings that are separated by those roads. So safety is an issue. One thing I think we can do to improve safety at our schools, we can have a resource officer placed at every school. We currently have 3 schools that don't have a resource officer. Crossville High School, Crossville Elementary, and Crossville Middle share one resource officer. We need one at each campus, and that would fall to the County Commission, the Board of Education, and to the Sheriff's Department to provide that. But I think that's something that we need to really, really look at. I think that we also have a resource officer that goes from Plainview to the tech school. That's not very far, but still they have to travel. So we need to do something about that.
What do you believe is the #1 concern facing our students in school system today?
I believe that technology is the main thing that we need to look at. We need to try to put devices in the hands of our students when at all possible. We're doing that at Valley Head through grants. We have a 21st Century grant. We're in the 9th year of the third 3-year cycle. That's brought in $125,000 per year. We've spent a lot of that on technology with Promethean boards and iPads and laptops. If you do the numbers on that, we've attained almost $1 million out of that in the first 8 years. So I think that you can look at a 21st Century grant at all schools and hopefully do that. We're also getting a grant from a glove company in Menlo, the Menlo Tillotson grant, which gives out about $10,000 increments each year, and we qualify because we're within 25 miles of Menlo. So that's one thing you can look at. We need to also look at other funding sources to buy more technology, because I think technology should be our focus to begin with when we start this coming administration.
I think, you know, preparing our students for college and career readiness is probably one of the biggest challenges we have. We've got a vocational school that has many programs and they're at capacity, but there's many opportunities and many options that we aren't providing our students that would be great to add to our tech school. We also need more academic offerings, more dual enrollment, more art education type programs. We need to make sure we're educating the well-rounded students, preparing them for life. Technology, as I mentioned, is something that's very, very important because for a lot of different reasons. One, they're going to college, students are going to be going to career college or wherever they may be going, and they're going to be competing against students who have, maybe they've been in school with a one-to-one device or had other options and stuff. We need to make sure our students are on at least a level playing field, if not an advantage. At Collinsville, we've been fortunate enough through some grants, through some fundraising, through representatives and senators helping us with some funding. We've got what I would consider a 3-to-1 initiative. For every 3 students, we've got 1 device, and what that allows us to do is in a class, if a classroom needs for every student to have a device that day so they can do their research or create a project or something of that nature, they've got access to it. Whereas if they don't, they can spread it out where every groups or however many if they want to do some partners, everybody has access to it. So basically what we've tried to do is make it so that every student in every teacher's classroom on that day, any given day, if they need access to a laptop or an iPad or whatever it may be, they've got that access. Because, you know, education has changed where in the past, you know, the teacher was the source of the knowledge. They presented all the learning and you consumed it. We were consuming knowledge and consuming information. But in today's world, students have to be able to evaluate that knowledge and prepare that knowledge and present something and make a product out of it that can be shared within their classroom, across the district, across the state, or wherever it may need to be. Because as an adult or as an individual, I Google something, but I've got to be able to evaluate it and know that it's a credible source. And our students need to be able to do some of the things, and what better opportunity than during, you know, under the guidance of a teacher.
Do you believe that a student's future is dependent upon a single standardized test? Explain your reasoning.
Well, no. I don't think that a student's future is dependent upon a single standardized test. I think there's, you know, just like we were talking about the teacher evaluations earlier, there's a lot of different components about it. A student who goes and takes one test, you never know what impact, what may have been going on that day. Over in Georgia not in Georgia, in Montgomery, last year there was a school who had said their last day, they had met the deadline for their test. Well, they had to get all their students on a bus and their wireless had went down, all their technology was out, they were taking their tests online. They had to go to a different school. They bussed them and hauled every student to a different school to take a test that day. You can't tell me that that test should count for that student's future, everything. But now, tests are important because colleges do look at tests, but certainly no, it's not. We need to look at all aspects. We need to look at their GPA, how they're achieving, what kind of extracurricular opportunities they're engaging in, how they're supporting the larger school community, how they're doing all kinds of things. There's all kinds of factors that weigh in on students' success that you can't always put in on a college application or on some of these things. But no, a single standardized test doesn't validate a student or a school in and of itself.
A test does not determine what the student does. The student determines what the student does. You know, you have your own ideas about what you would like to do. You may not decide what you want to do with your future until you get second or third year in college. You may change 2 or 3 times. A standardized test does not determine your future. You have to look at the whole body of work. Most of the time you look at GPA, you look at how the student has progressed throughout his career, and a standardized test is not going to determine your future, and not one day. You never know what's been going on. It could have been a bad day for the student. They may have been sick. Something may have been going on at home. I don't think that it ought to determine whether a student fails or whether a school fails. That's un-American, because they don't let you, if they don't let you choose what you do, if a standardized test is what's going to determine what you do, then that goes against everything that we stand for as a nation.
What would you do as superintendent to build relationships with students and teachers across the county?
I plan on being accessible to all of them. This is a great thing. I'm glad that you're interested to do this for them. But what I would like to see is, of course, I plan on visiting schools if elected and talking with students. But I would like to have a student council that would come before the board and talk about the needs of the students. You're seniors, so this is not going to affect you, but the people that come after you would need to be a part of this. And I would like to see something like that come about with our system, to have students come in and discuss problems, discuss goals. What would you like to see done at your school? What would you like to see done with our system? And I think that student voice is very, very important.
Okay, that concludes with the formatted questions we had built on. One of the main reasons we seniors and students wanted to put this together was to...
He didn't get to answer that.
He didn't get to answer. I didn't answer.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
His answer won't be as good as mine. But
that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
We'll just pretend that didn't happen.
We can edit that.
I apologize.
Oh, that's fine. But as I mentioned earlier, one of the key things I want to do is make sure that my goal is within the first 6 weeks is to visit every teacher's classroom. And like I mentioned, not necessarily just to sit around and do a long observation, but just to sit in there and say, hey, I introduce myself. I'm here to support you. I want to help you any way I can. What can I do for you to make things better for you? How can I support you? And let them know that they can contact me anytime with that support. As Mr. Monroe mentioned, something we did years back that we haven't done lately is have a student advisory committee. I can remember being on a team where we interviewed students and they shared good things that were going on in that school and some things they were, like to see changes. And that was very, very positive and very beneficial. And I don't know why that, wouldn't or shouldn't be brought back. But I think the biggest thing is, being accessible. I've walked in every school, minus one in this county so far, and I hope to get there. I've been to every one of them, but just during the campaign this school year, I mean. But I hope to be able to do that, and it's important that people see your face. They know you're there. They know you care for them. They know you want to support them and want to help them. And when you do that, I think, you help build that foster relationship because they know that you're there and you actually genuinely care, and you're going to be coming back to support them in ways that you can.
Now that concludes our questioning. Once again, I apologize for interrupting you. As I was saying earlier, us seniors and students want to put this together to bring the community together for one common goal, and that's the school system. So, on top of that, we would like to see if anyone from the crowd has a few questions for the candidates.
air conditioning on school buses? You want to do this first, or you want me to?
However.
I think that you could bid out air conditioning on buses. One thing I think we need to do right off the bat is bid cameras on school buses, because all of our, okay, but every bus does not have a camera. One thing that I think we could do to alleviate part of the heat problem is have a later start of school. But I believe now that we need to bid all of our buses with air conditioning. I don't know how much more that would be, but the way that we start school in early August and those kids are on there, we tell our teachers not to bring kindergarten kids out until about 2 or 3 minutes before the buses get ready to leave or before the high school comes out there, because you don't want them sitting on there for a long period of time because it's very, very hot. I think that we need to bid air conditioning on all new school buses, but I also think we need to do cameras too.
One question that was asked at the last debating forum was about the school hours versus number of days, and that was basically one of the main reasons we had, was because we started school, you know, teachers come on August 1st, students on August 4th, and as we mentioned, that was, I think my mic's not working, but as we mentioned, that was a major problem because students were out there burning up on the school bus. And that's not safe, and it's not appropriate for small children or even the adults that are driving the buses. So, you know, quoting them, it doesn't cost you any extra to quote them like that. So absolutely, I think that's something, you know, to look into and see what we can definitely do. And if it's where we can, it's feasible, then that's worth looking into and worth doing.
Yes, sir.
I like the idea of what you talk about, starting school later. Seems like every year they move school up 5 days each year. And it's just getting ridiculous way too early. If you think, looking into the system about adding 15 minutes more, 20 minutes more to the day, then let the school start later, we can get the same amount of time in, but not start school as quick, because on them, like she said, on the school buses, you put a thermometer out there, it's like 110 degrees.
Right.
If you leave your kid in the car, Walmart, 110 degrees.
Yeah.
You rest.
Well, it's like what I was talking about, the state allows you a waiver where you can do 180 academic student dates or 1,080 hours. And like Fort Payne and several other school systems, what they've done with that is that allowed them to knock off like 6 days with students. And that may not seem like a whole much, but when you start bumping it back up a little over a week, and you've got students coming on a bus about the 12th of August versus the 4th, that is a pretty big difference. Now this year has been kind of interesting because it's the middle. It was, you know, middle of October, toward the end of October, and it's 80 degrees. But this is kind of an anomaly of a year. But absolutely, I think that's something that I want to look at. And plus, it allows teachers still work the same number of days, so that allows them more time to prepare their classroom, to partner up, to analyze the data, to develop their curriculum and the things they're going to do that year. So I think it's almost a win-win, where you may have less days. Hopefully you have more quality to the days that you do have, because you've had more ample time to prepare and organize things and get everything lined up for when students do come back. So I think that is a win-win in a lot of areas, in a lot of ways.
I agree with him 100%. I don't think I can come up with a better solution other than extend the school day 15 to 30 minutes a day. One thing that you look at, we also build in weather days. Well, if you're using the seat time instead of the days, you probably wouldn't have to have weather days except maybe for a break. Of course, you could also extend the fall break to 2 or 3 more days, at least a week. We could look at something like that. But you can cut down on the number of days by adding seat time to the school day.
We, back there.
Would I look at full reimbursement for utility bills? Yes. I know it's very tough to for your brake stores now because of the federal guidelines. There's probably not a brake store in DeKalb County that's truly following the guidelines, but we still do not. When the state comes in, you have to hide the Snickers. And I'm sure it's that way here.
No.
But I'm sure that every school, you do what you have to do to pay the bills, but it still doesn't pay the bills. I know at our school, probably Collinsville's the same way, we don't make enough in our break store to cover the difference in the bills every year from what we get in reimbursement. And I think that it's 90% right now. It needs to be 100%, and we need to do something about phone bills also.
Well, the leaders in our school, the principals, you know, we're asking them to be fundraisers instead of instructional leaders oftentimes, because we're reimbursing them 90%. And while 90% sounds like a whole lot, well, when you're talking about, you know, $10,000 a month bills, then you're looking at, it's still quite a deficit. So we're asking our principals and the people who really need to and want to and should be focusing on teacher efficacy and improving their teachers, and observing classrooms, supporting students to be the best they can, and being the instructional leader of their school. We're taking time away from that because they've got to make sure they can balance their budget at the end of the month and figure out if they need a snake show or a faculty student volleyball games just so that they can pay the bills. And that's something that is real. I mean, you talk to principals, and at a high school, it's better than it is at a middle school or elementary, because at least we've got some areas and some avenues and ways that we can help, raise some funds. But absolutely, I think that's something that needs to be taking place, should have a while back. It may take some growing to do that, and we may have to do it, maybe jump to 95% first and then jump to 100%, do it as fast and expeditiously as we possibly can. But if we want our principals to really truly be instructional leaders in our school, we got to take some of these other things off of them so they can focus on doing what we say we want them to do and what we really do want them to do.
All right, any other questions?
I realize you guys are right in the middle of trying to get elected, but share with me your thoughts on possibly changing the superintendent position to a school board appointed position rather than elected.
That's a good question, and it's something that a lot of people have asked, because I know a couple years ago this was something that was presented, bill was drafted, it was presented and went to the House floor, and it did not pass, it come away. Now, I hopefully, good Lord willing, will be put by the people of DeKalb County as superintendent. People will vote on me to be the superintendent, and I hope to fill that position. Now, as an elected official, I don't feel that I could in good conscience go out and say, hey, I don't want y'all to have a say on this anymore. I don't feel that that would be something that my moral compass would allow me to do, because the people put me there. I think, we ran this campaign for 16 months. And I know there's a lot of people who are appointed superintendents who say, hey, running a campaign for 16 months would take away from your time on duties and time on your job. And I understand that. I understand that concern. I understand that point. And I do see that. But good Lord willing, if I am elected superintendent, I would find it very difficult for me to campaign against doing it the same way in which I was fortunate enough to land that position, if that makes sense.
I don't think you need to take the choice away from the people. I believe in DeKalb County we need to elect our public officials. The superintendent of education is one of them. I mean, what's more important than the education of your children? And you need to have a voice in that. I'm against an appointed superintendent because a lot of times they have search committees and they go outside the system. What better way to serve your community and your system and your county than to be a resident of that county? You know what your county needs, you know what your county wants, you know the attitude of the people. And I would be against taking that voice away from the people.
Any other questions? Standing up for religious views in the public schools. What's your views on the freedom of religion in the public schools?
Freedom of religion. All students have the right to express their religious views in certain areas. You have the right to pray whenever you want to. As long as there's algebra tests, there's going to be prayer in schools.
Amen.
I mean, but it cannot be, as far as It cannot be teacher-led, and it cannot be administrator-led. It has to be a religious freedom given to the student. You're free to express that in Bible clubs, FCA, and any time that you feel the need to pray or whatever, you can. You have that right. And but it can't be school sponsored. Is what we're saying, because you can't have government sponsorship of religion. That's the separation of church and state.
Like Mr. Monroe mentioned, anytime a student wants to pray, they can certainly do that. And there's obviously student-led clubs at Collins. We have FCA. A couple weeks ago, we had a prayer at the pole. Students gathered and they had a prayer at the pole. And we do have faculty sponsors who help with some of that stuff, or help organize some things and lead the FCA and some of that stuff. Even facilities can be used. I know at Fife and Geraldine, and maybe even here at Sylvania, I think I may be wrong on the Sylvania, but they know they used a couple of gyms as places where people prayed and got together and prayed for their school and do stuff. And I know several of our communities within the students, they'll gather to school the day before school starts, and they'll walk around the campus. Churches will do all that stuff, and that's perfectly fine. That's something that students and the community and people have right to do. As Mr. Monroe mentioned, we can't, as an employee, you can't force somebody to pray, or can't force that opponent, or can't, decide that's what's going to happen. But students certainly have the right to pray and lead or develop religious clubs, Bible study groups, whatever they wanted to do. When I was in school, there was a Bible study group that met at high school one day a week, about 45 minutes before school started, and we'd meet in a teacher's classroom. They left the door unlocked. We went in there and we did a little scripture reading, and that's something that's been going on for a long time. And when I graduated in the 90s, that was a big deal with all of the religious freedoms. That DeKalb County was going through a major lawsuit at that time. And at my, so prayer has been going on, and it'll continue to go on. It just has to be student-led, something the students choose to do and want to do, and if they do it, that's fine.
I think he's meaning, would y'all try to take a stand against what has been put in the state system, being the voice of some of these religious freedoms?
Well, I mean, obviously religious freedom is something that's important to me, and it is something that's important to anybody who is a Christian. I am a Christian. And I want my religious freedoms. I don't want anybody's religious freedoms taken away from me or my children. I've got two children that one of them attends public school, Plainview High School, or she's in elementary school. The other one will be starting in a couple of years. And I definitely want religious freedoms for my kids, and I want to protect what they've got, absolutely, without a doubt. But be a voice for those religious freedoms? Well, sure, obviously, if I'm going to be, I want those for my kids, and I'm going to make sure that, I don't want any infringement upon our religious rights and freedoms. Sure, absolutely. If that's what you're asking.
We'll stand to protect the religious freedoms of all of our students and make sure that they can do what they need to do or what they want to do without any infringement on it.
Okay.
I believe we have time for one more question. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to do a difficult one. With some of the schools around the United States, they're having a few transgender issues with bathrooms and locker rooms. My husband seems to think this will never enter DeKalb County, but as a mom, this is a fear of mine. What kind of safeguards are going to be put up if it is infringed on us here?
What you can look at, the Alabama High School Athletic Association goes by the gender that's on the birth certificate. That's what they look at. If that's on the birth certificate, that's the gender that you are. As far as allowing transgender people just because they identify to be transgender, an opposite sex, just because they identify, that does not mean they have the right to go into the public restroom with other students. Whatever they are, that's where they'll go as far as I'm concerned.
When President Obama made that declaration back in the spring, I was, that immediately hit the news big time. And Senator Phil Williams was somebody I contacted immediately, and Representative Ledbetter, because I knew they would be out on the front of this and trying to stop this. I think this is just absolutely, whatever's on your birth certificate, whatever your birth gender is, I mean, that's the bathroom you need to use, that's the locker room you need to use, that's cut and dry. I mean, how you're born, what's on your birth certificate, that's what you need, that's cut and dry.
All right, I thank everyone for getting involved and presenting their questions for the candidates. And before we close, we will allow each of the candidates to give a kind of a closing, what they need to get out to say.
All right. Well, once again, I'm Jason Barnett. This Thursday will be 16 months and 2 weeks since we announced we were going to seek this position of superintendent. And over that 16 months, I've met some great people, made friends with folks I'd otherwise have never had the opportunity to meet. I've heard so many good things that are going on in our schools, and I've heard some areas that which we have major needs and that we can really improve upon. I'm excited about the opportunity. I think we can bring some great innovative practices to Cobb County. I know there's a lot of great challenges. I've heard about them from every school in this county. But there's one thing I've found is there's very dedicated and passionate and disciplined people in our schools that really want great things. And I couldn't be more excited about the opportunities that we may possibly have to lead the Cobb County schools into as a district that, unlike any other, in terms of our innovation of practices, our instructional leadership, and all the things that we can do. I do ask for your support on November the 8th when you go vote. As I mentioned, I'm going to be here until the last person leaves. If I can answer any questions during your support, I'd be thankful for that opportunity. You can look me up on Facebook, Barnett for Superintendent, or just my personal page, Jason Barnett. My cell phone number, I've been giving it out to everybody that wants. That way I can hear from you, 256-717-3558. Please call me, do anything I can do to earn your vote. I would appreciate it very much. And thank you guys for the opportunity to talk to you. As I mentioned, the biggest thing you need as a candidate is an opportunity to get in front of people and share your ideas and your thoughts, and you guys help provide that opportunity here tonight. So I'm thankful to the senior class officers for that, and Sylvania High School for helping host it. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's great to see young people that are interested in the political process. I look at you and I think, I've been gone from here 18 years. You probably weren't born when I left here. So I do have some former students here. I'm not going to say what year they graduated, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. This election, I know that you've heard so much about the presidential election. That's been on everybody's minds. That's on every media outlet that you see. Well, I can tell you something. The most important election that's taking place in this county right now is the election for superintendent of education, because that's going to determine the direction that our schools go for the next 4 years. And I hope that I get the opportunity to lead this school system. And I humbly ask for your vote and your support. And if you need to contact me, my cell phone number is 256-635-8226. And like Dr. Barnett, I'll be glad to stay around and answer any question that you have. If you want to visit me at my school, or if you want to call me to come to a meeting, I'll come. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I humbly ask for your vote November the 8th. Thank you.
We would once again like to thank everyone who came out tonight to support us in this. It means a lot to me, especially the senior class, that each and every single one of you are here, and that some of y'all asked some questions and got involved. I would once again like to apologize for any technical difficulties interrupting your process. But we are very thankful that you two came out and took interest in us as the students. It means a lot to us as well. So once again, let's give them a round of applause. And that concludes the Sylvania High School forum and debate. Thank you.
Good job, Todd.
Turn there.
I know what they did. Yeah, it was loud with it, but I guess it was warm without it.
I was going to say how old I was. That's
Uh-oh,
what I thought.
uh-oh.
He's looking at me. He's about to say it.
Try to.